we see too many siloed conversations, too many people talking in an echo chamber. There is just not enough of bringing different perspectives together.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anand Jha, and you're listening to the Oil and Gas Breaking By show. Today, I'm happy and excited because we'll be joined by Monika Simoes, a founder and CEO of the Energy Dialogue Inc., a global network that brings energy leaders across energy value chain to share their insights, make strategic connections, and get over the silos that might have created in this energy industry. She has been at this for more than a decade and has seen many first-hand open conversations and how it helped this industry evolve. There are many biases that might exist in this industry. And we will also see the power of one open dialogue, how it helps to break these biases. Monica, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Anand, for having me.
Thank you. And before we go into all the discussion, I will say I have attended that forum, one of the Energy Dialogue forum a few months ago, and I was impressed how it was open platform and where all the energy leaders were able to speak their mind, and also lots of people can learn from it. So thanks for doing that, because we don't see these kind of forums a lot. Either it's too big, too small, but I think that forum had a perfect size where everybody could meet and greet and talk about the things which is important for them.
I'm glad to hear that. It's one thing when I talk about what we do at Energy Dialogues, but it's always so much better when other people speak about their experiences. We put a lot of work and effort into bringing the right people together in the right context. So I'm glad you had that experience.
Definitely. Monica said, like, you are doing this thing for more than a decade and you are part of many conversation as a part of this Energy Dialogue platform. So without going into details, I will start with why. Why have you started this Energy Dialogue?
It's funny you ask it that way because this is a central question for everything we do at Energy Dialogues, and really how I started it is why, right? Because there are so many events. We didn't necessarily need another event, and there are just more and more events. But starting with the why, I think, is really, really important. And why is because we see too many siloed conversations, too many people talking in an echo chamber. There is just not enough of bringing different perspectives together. And really, that's how it all started. Bringing people together who don't necessarily agree, who don't necessarily talk, but are willing to engage in conversation, and then more importantly, in action. You mentioned it's been over a decade. I founded the company back in 2013, and I'm sure you remember that was the time of the shale gas revolution, and so it was a lot of convenings on shale and conventional gas, but specifically the gas industry is such a fragmented industry. And so we were told by some of the people that we were working with closely that, we're past this time when we need to talk about the great technology we have to extract the gas out of the ground. And instead, we should come together as full industry, the full value chain, and talk about some of the common challenges and opportunities out there, and bring in the policymakers, the investors, the environmental groups, just the entire ecosystem. And that is really how Energy Dialogues started, to say we have to talk to more people in ways that makes them more engaged and understands better, what some of the different perspectives and challenges are.
So I will be really curious to know, was there any moment or incident that convinced you if you bring all the right people on the same table, something different will happen?
I'm a big believer in the power of dialogue and the power of speaking other people's language, figuratively and in reality. I grew up in Germany. My parents are Hungarian. I lived in many different countries, and I learned most of the languages of the countries I lived in. And the difference of speaking someone else's language is incredible. You just get a complete different perspective and insight. And so I think very naturally I gravitated towards doing that in my professional life. And so sometimes, sitting at the table with an operator and an environmental group and a policymaker, and just having these very insightful and different conversations is so eye-opening and powerful because once you have those conversations, you can do more together and collaborate and really do incredible things. I don't know if there was one specific thing that happened, but I have been playing with the idea of founding a company for a long time. I like to plan and be really prepared on. So when I started it, I had a very clear plan, but that plan was something that developed over many years, and it was just the right time because it just felt like there needed to be more that's happening in this rational middle. We all heard that, right? It's just bringing people together and having pragmatic, solution focused dialogue that ultimately ends up in action and projects and collaborations.
That makes sense. Most of the time, when the founder they think about some ideas, the idea is different, but after 10 years, it changed to something else. How, when you look back, how you see is the same idea still there, or it had evolved over the years?
It's always evolving. 2013 seems just like a minute ago and also a lifetime ago. It's depending on how you look at it. So much has happened in that time. The core idea is the same, is bringing people together for dialogue and action. What we do has evolved a lot, and the themes, some of the themes are the same. I think we're still talking about building broader coalitions and bringing people together who don't necessarily agree. The topics have changed. Our reach has changed. Of course, we're doing so many things now. We have our main forums, but we also have our Energy Leader series, our academic collaborations. We have under Chatham House rule and by invitation only. We have a podcast as well and a membership. And so I think it's just our reach is broader and yeah, but in terms of, we're bringing together decision makers, very important, not just commentators on the industry, which is also important, but we're
Yes.
really bringing together the people who are making decisions and who are driving projects and the industry forward, policymakers and regulators. And that has always been our goal and our commitment to bringing the right people together in the right setup and with the purpose of really generating meaningful impact and progress.
And as you already mentioned, this is the platform where you bridge the gap between industry, policymaker, operators, innovators, or vendors like us who can be on the same table discussing about something that can be for greater good instead of thinking in silos. Yeah. And another point you made about the technology discussion versus open conversation. So whenever we think about energy, we immediately jump into technology discussion. What would be the next technology to get more
Mhm.
production? How we can be more efficient? But sometimes we have to put that technology hat on the side and be open about the beliefs, assumptions, perspectives that people might have towards this industry.
Very true. I think that technology and the perspective is very important, right? Technology is so important, but sometimes to adopt the technology and to scale it and commercialize it, a lot of conversation has to happen before. But then the technology is really helping us to make so much progress. And I always remember the thing I heard it once, give an engineer a problem and they'll solve it. That's their thrive on. And so for me, this industry is just so fascinating
Yes.
because I mean, this better, just the incredible leaps and advances we made, the things this industry is doing from a technology complexity angle is incredible.
You made a good point. And there's so many engineers in this energy industry, and they get excited when there is some technical problem. But sometimes it's much more than that. Like in the last forum, we talked about the permit, the delays, the infrastructure, the value chain, which a much bigger topic than the technology itself. Yes, technology is important, but there are many other things which can make and break this industry. And also that brings me to the discussion about beliefs, inception, and perspective in this energy industry. As I mentioned, you see this industry very closely and through different channels, different forums. What are the assumption or biases or stereotypes that might exist in this industry? And it could be the recurring theme of your forum, that you might come across more than often.
I'm thinking about a few different things. We can dive into whichever. So biases. I think there is this bias from outside of the industry to think that, oil and gas executives are all about making money and just building and doing. And I think that couldn't be further from the truth. Obviously, that's a thing, shareholder value and stuff, very important. But I think and I have met so many people, obviously, in this industry. Just everyone is trying to do things well and better and creating more energy with less emissions and doing it as fast with the technology. You're right, there's so many other things than technology, but nothing happens without the technology. So I think it's really important. So I think that is a bias. I think the other thing is just to have this is clean energy, this is dirty energy. I always like to look at things from an end perspective and balanced. And that is very much the emphasis we have in all of our dialogues. It's this and it's also that. We have to work on emissions, but we also have to lift people out of poverty and give them access to energy. So I think breaking that bias of clean versus dirty is something that is probably the most important thing that we're working on as energy dialogues.
One thing to add here, like it's not about the transition. Like I always say, it's about the transformation and energy mix, because we cannot just say like let's close all the tabs and let's focus on something else. And as some countries try to do that, and they have burned their fingers. As you mentioned, like we need a mix of all kind of energy, and we can debate how we can make it cleaner or better and cheaper, so most people can use it. But I fully agree with what you just said. Like we cannot have a good energy source and bad energy source. So please
And
continue.
I think maybe another, very true, and maybe another bias there is this. We have a lot of conversation, very importantly, of course, on electrifying things. But what we forget is there's a lot of things that we can't electrify. You mentioned the word fingers, and so I will give a little anecdote, which is I mentioned this to you earlier when we were off camera, off the recording part, but I had a little hand injury a few days ago. Yesterday, I had to have a little surgery, and while I'm sitting there in under local anesthesia and antibiotics I just took and listening to nice soothing classical music, having my finger cut open, I was thinking I am so grateful for modern medicine because yes, because of the surgeon who is wonderful and fixes people up so they can go on about their lives, but also because if this injury had happened to me 200 years ago, before the oil and gas age, I might have not made it through because, all of the anesthetics, the antibiotics, so many of the things, we can't make that without petroleum-based products. And we
Yes.
forget that
We forget that.
sometimes.
We always focus on one part of it, but there's so many
Yeah.
things that we use on day-to-day basis. Is all
Yes.
or most of the things, I won't say all, but most of the things comes from this petroleum industry. Let's talk about bias about yourself. Any bias or stereotypes you might had and you never realized you held those biases.
About energy?
Anything that you had a bias about something, and then you held it for long and without realizing it.
Good question. Probably yes. I am not sure that I have a good answer right now because as I mentioned, I lived in so many cultures and places that I'm someone who just loves to listen to people's different perspectives and ask questions and hear where they are coming from and all of that. So I moved to the US in 2012. I grew up in Europe. I'm one of those people who I didn't really have any intention to moving to the US, and it just sort of happened. And I don't know that I was necessarily biased, but maybe a little bit towards the US. And my experience has been incredible. I built a business, starting a business. I think that's one of the main things you always hear and know about the US is how entrepreneurial and how much
Yes.
opportunity there is to start a business and do it with so much less red tape than in Europe.
Any other part of the world, actually, yes.
any other part of the world for sure. Yeah, we had someone at our North American Gas Forum, the event we met in DC, and she's from Senegal, and she is an energy access advocate, and
I
she's
remember.
fantastic. Doing a bit.
I remember. She was really
Yeah,
passionate.
yeah. And she's talking about how difficult it is to build a business in Africa. I guess
Yeah.
that's what I would come up with. Yeah.
I think you made a really good point. Sometimes we assume things, as you said, like even in the US, how people see from outside is different than when you live in the country itself.
Always.
And that goes also for other countries like which are developing countries or developed countries. Sometimes we have a bias, about how we'll do the business and the culture and dynamics. For someone like you who had experienced different culture in your life, that helps to overcome that bias. And as you said, like sometimes we don't realize we have that bias or stereotypes that we have created for somebody. But I think we need to look into those things and try to break it and experience by ourselves before making our mind about anything. So I think you made a really good point. So let's move from bias to the industry. As I mentioned, like you have created this forum almost 10 years ago, and you have interacted with many energy leaders. So let me ask you how you see the change in the industry in terms of challenges and opportunities versus 10 years ago.
I think a lot of the challenges are still the same as in the past, but probably evolving. So this need for more dialogue, this need for speeding up things like permitting reform, and especially in this day and age of AI and data centers. I think that's a huge thing that's happening right now, and really, like after so many years of pretty much flat demand on the load growth side, it's something that is speeding up so much. So I think that's just bringing to the front of focus and attention how much we have to build things and build things quicker. So I think that's definitely something that is changing a lot now, and it's still really like bringing people together in the right setting and not talking in an echo chamber. This is something we hear. If anything, we hear it more now than we've ever done, which is we need to talk more with people who disagree. We need to talk more with people who are skeptical about our industry. And to our question about, or the discussion about bias earlier, the public is incredibly biased in many ways about what's happening in energy. And it's a difficult subject because energy is so very complex, but people feel quite strongly about it. And so
Yes,
that
correct.
is a combination
And,
that really,
it goes both ways. Like sometimes like this feels strongly, and sometimes the positive sense or also negative sense. So if you're positive about it, you
oh,
immediately both parties have a very tough stand. So we have to find
yeah, yeah,
neutral stand.
we just need to be more nuanced. And, we can't disagree or fight with the physics and the science, but how we talk about things and how we progress and what we're doing with the knowledge and the science, that is something. But I heard this comparison at some point, and I thought it was really interesting, funny, whichever, how all of us are driving cars, but most people don't really know how the car exactly works. But most people don't really care because you just want to drive a car. Somehow energy, we all use it, we can't live without. But it's one of those topics that a lot of people feel very passionate about one way or another. So
Yes.
I would love to find more ways to use that passion to really all work together on saying we need energy, we need it clean. Most people, or many people, have kids. Most people want to leave the planet, whether they have kids or not, a better place, right? We want to do good things. So, but we also have a footprint because we use energy, all of us. The only way not to have a footprint is to not breathe and do anything, and that's not really an option.
And that's not an
So
option,
how do we
definitely.
work better
Yeah.
together?
That makes sense. So also when you talk about the opportunities, anything related to data centers or anything that brings more opportunity in the market, or it just a one spike? How do you see that?
Well, I think the hyperscalers coming in now and having a renewed focus on, I don't just want to say gas because it's reliable, affordable energy and fast and at scale and all of that. Now, the reality is that's a lot of that will be gas, has to be gas for now, combined with renewables, combined with other things. Having the attention from the hyperscalers and data center developers, I think that's an interesting that is broadening the question and the conversation. And so I think that's a big opportunity to invest in an infrastructure that is, for example, gas with CCS. And
Yes.
we've heard some of those announcements last year, right, with Google, etc. So I think that is a big opportunity if it's done right. I think what that requires, again, is to have people come and sit together and figure out solutions together, bring the hyperscalers and the energy industry together and have more of the conversations we need. I would say that's definitely one thing that I would mention.
No, makes sense. And when you talk about these opportunities, so lots of our listeners are engineers, early career professionals, or energy leaders. What one skill set or mindset that you can underline they should have to get succeed in this changing environment?
Be open and inquisitive and always think about think outside the box a little bit. That sounds a little cliche, but what I'm saying with that is, especially early career, you're often working on a specific project and in a little bit more of a confined setting of just projects and in a specific department. But looking outside of that and seeing how do the pieces all fit together and what's actually possible in the big setting of markets and the economy and technology and all of that, I think is really very, very relevant. You might have met some of them, but we have a student cohort at each of our forums, and the North American Gas Forum is where it all started. We bring together a group of exceptional students that, go through a whole application process and such. And they come, and very often we hear from them after, this really changed my whole perception of energy, and I had no idea, and this happened, and I got to meet the CEO of Williams and the CEO of EQT and all these people who really are at the center of making very important decisions that are moving our energy industry forward. Having that exposure is great. Social media is there. I speak LinkedIn specifically. So much information out there. But for someone who's pretty new to the industry or still studying, it's very hard to know what do I follow? Everyone is a journalist technically, right? Anyone
Yes,
can have
these
an
days
audience. But so
everything
I
is
would
easy. Lots of
for sure.
information. Lots of
Yeah.
information there.
So I would say stay inquisitive, ask questions. Don't just take things, I mean, take some things at face value, but
Makes sense.
ask questions. Look at it from a different perspective. Talk to people who think differently and make up your own, well,
Yeah, yeah,
figure out
definitely.
your own
Makes sense.
answers to it.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. As it's like there are lots of information there. Sometimes it creates noise. So you have to dissect that noise and find what makes sense. And also, you mentioned about that North America Gas Forum. I think that was a good opportunity for some early career professionals to come and experience the energy industry by themselves. I
Yeah.
remembered like some of the short speeches they gave during dinner time. And that was funny to see how they were thinking about energy industry and how their perspective changed after the event. So it was really good to hear all those feedbacks.
It's one of my highlights. It's just, to see these young humans who are about to embark on their career and have this opportunity and come together, and we're also creating a little bit of an alumni network, if you will, because we have now probably like 30 plus students who have participated in the forums through the student cohorts. They stay in touch with each other, they stay in touch with us, and the hope is that they're taking these nuanced learnings and the different perspectives and this approach of this is true and this is also true, and go and run with it and take it back to they will become subject matter experts. They will start somewhere at a company, but they have this bigger picture that they heard at the North American Gas Forum and some of the other forums we have. So the hope is that for sure.
Also brings us to our rapid fire round. Monica, are you ready?
I mean, as ready as I'll get.
Okay, let's see. One assumption about energy leadership that's overrated.
Sorry, one assumption.
Yes, one assumption about energy leadership that's overrated.
Already I'm failing at this. Uh, Energy leadership specifically.
Yes.
About energy leadership. I mean, I would say the same as for other leadership. I think sometimes the assumption that leaders know everything and have all the answers.
That's a good one, definitely. And that's not the case that we have realized many times during our conversations.
But I wouldn't single out energy. It's just, I think, in
In
general.
general, in general. Yeah, makes sense. One thing about open dialogue in business that most people misunderstand.
That we have to come out at the other end all agreeing. It
Understood. Yeah.
doesn't need to, it's not, the idea is not to come out of it and then everyone thinks the same. It's just exposing ourselves to different perspectives and different set of experiences and see if there is something we can take away. Plus this part of education. I'm always thinking that education, when we say, oh, we have to educate
Yes.
the general public, for example, well, not wrong, but I think you want to engage with people and understand their worries and concerns and see how you can find more common ground.
You made a really good point. Most of the time, we immediately go into teaching mode. Let me tell you how it works.
And look, like we have to understand how it works. Unfortunately, and this is not just energy, but the thing is, like with so much access to all kinds of information, some people tend to be very fast at having an opinion, but not necessarily having all the facts. And we can't argue with the facts. Science is science, physics is physics. There are certain things that are possible, certain things that are not. But from there, we can't just say, okay, we're going to go out and educate. We can, but it's nuanced. There might be some better ways to engage and reach the same results.
Makes sense. One quality every future energy leader must cultivate.
Thinking in a nuanced and balanced way, and less looking at things black or white, and more asking questions. To me, this is such a big. It's a big part of my job to ask questions, but I also think it's an incredibly valuable life lesson. When you hear that, I'm sure you heard it. The person who is in charge of the conversation in a room is not the person who talks the most. It's the person who asks the question.
Yes,
To me, that is such an
definitely,
incredible, yeah.
definitely,
Which is
and
why I love so much what I do.
definitely, and how easily we forget about that. So we all know
Oh,
about it.
yes, yes, yeah. I love to ask questions. It's really something that I love to just learn, and so I think that's a good skill. Good
Because, no, makes sense. One bias you would love to see fade in energy conversations.
what we talked about earlier. It's clean versus dirty, and good versus bad.
Bad.
It's these black and white statements, and just understand that the future of energy has to be balanced. We have to look at all energy sources. There is a huge part of the population of the world that lives in complete energy poverty. And so to say you can use this, but you can't use that, I think that's really difficult and a big topic for us as well. And I know a big topic for some of our network to just understand that we'll need a lot more energy and we'll need a lot less emissions. And how can we do it better?
Last not the least, one reason optimism is still matters in this industry.
I mean, to me, it's the most incredible industry to work in. We make people's lives better. We have such incredible technology advances. There's constant innovation and just amazing things we're doing, and being able to produce more energy with less emissions. It's constantly getting better and sometimes fast and in so many ways. I would more say, how could you not be optimistic? We have an incredible we have an incredible group of experts and people working here. The only thing I would say is, how do we translate that better to the next generation of leaders coming into this? Because while I love energy, I know that not necessarily everyone thinks that way. And how do we get more of the bright young minds to join this industry versus some others that might, on the surface, seem a
Shiny.
little more exciting and a little more predictable and shiny? Yeah, shiny objects. We all
Yeah.
like those. So I think that's where we can maybe, how do we transmit that optimism? Because all the people I speak to who are in our industry, I'm sure you would say the same thing, is what an incredible industry to work in, right? How do we, but there's so much to do. And not to quote Brendan Spencer, but I loved how he actually was interviewed by someone that we are connected with as well, Energy Terminal, Michael Wood. Giving him a shout out because, talking about how to do great things in this industry. He's a young professional, but I met him when he was at Duke University. Very bright young man who's going to do great things. When he spoke with Brendan said, take this passion. His message, right, to the next generation is take the passion you have and put it to good use. Come and join the driver's seat, and that's how you can accomplish great things.
Yeah, exactly.
So people are passionate. Young people especially are passionate about energy, one way or another. But come on, us, put it to good use.
Makes sense. So I will underline this, be part of the solution. And also, this industry is not going anywhere. This industry is going to transform
Yes,
itself for many more decades to come.
very true. Yeah.
Yeah. We're coming end of our conversation, Monica. Let me ask you, if we have to underline one thing or one insights from our conversation today, what that would be?
I think what you just said, this industry is not going anywhere. Come join, be part of it. Stay curious, ask questions, and make sure that you are looking at things from different perspectives before having a strong stance one way or another.
That's great. So before I sign off, anything to add here, Monica?
I think I was really looking forward to this conversation. I love the way you're doing the podcasts. I looked at a few of them, and it's great. I always love to talk about energy and dialogue, and so I appreciated the opportunity to do that with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed all the conversation, and I hope our listeners will find the same value what we found today. Keep listening Oil and Gas Breaking Bias show, and also keep breaking all the biases with one dialogue at a time. See you next week. Have a great day. Thank you.